You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the journalist and author, Rachel Shabi, and the editor of Spiked, Tom Slater. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Express reports that Boris Johnson is promising the government will take big, bold decisions on jobs, crime, health and social care as Conservatives gather for the start of the party's conference in Manchester. The Observer leads with a group of Conservative MPs telling the Prime Minister he can't increase prosperity in poorer parts of the UK while raising taxes and cutting benefits. The PM is to rush through laws to stop protesters blocking motorways, according to the Mail, with the headline, "Boris, I'll lock up activists blocking the road." The Telegraph says coronavirus travel restrictions will change this week and claims the 54 countries on the government's red list will be cut to as few as 9. The Mirror claims an investigation into the Metropolitan Police has found 26 colleagues of murderer Wayne Couzens have committed sex crimes since 2016. The Times says Sarah Everard's killer was given an access all areas pass at the Houses of Parliament on a number of occasions when he was deployed to guard MPs. Care homes face a Christmas crisis, reports The People, with up to 42,000 workers at risk of being sacked for not having a COVID vaccination. And The Star has a story about Dad's Army actor Frank Williams. And we are joined now by Rachel Shabi and Tom Slater. Good evening to you both. Welcome. Let's start with The Observer and that story that we mentioned there, running through the papers of Conservative MPs actually, going against Boris Johnson, breaking ranks and saying that really you can't level up by taxing the poor and cutting benefits. Rachel.
Yes, that's right. So this is ahead of the Conservative annual conference in Manchester. There's a breakaway group of MPs, and this includes MPs who, in the 2019 election, took long-standing Labour seats across the North and the Midlands. And they are, exactly as you say, challenging Boris Johnson and expecting to challenge him at this conference by saying, look, how is your levelling up so-called agenda going to work if, in the last few months we've had increases in tax, so national insurance, and also cuts to benefits, particularly the universal credit uplift, which is set to be cut. That's coming into effect on Wednesday. And so this group of MPs is led by Jack Berry from the Northern Research Group, and that's a group of some 50 MPs across the Northeast. And you have to say they've got a point. I mean, we're all feeling economic anxiety at the moment in the middle of a fuel crisis, spiralling energy costs. Furlough just ended. The fuel cap has just risen. And so a lot of people are feeling a lot of anxiety. And I just don't think, if you are serious about a levelling up agenda, I don't think you can do that unless you have a specific plan for state intervention to tackle some of those very, very deep inequalities and injustices.
Tom, do you think this group of Tory MPs have a point, and will the Prime Minister be able to persuade them otherwise at a conference in Manchester?
Well, I think they definitely have a point on the immediate circumstances that people find themselves in, as Rachel was just referring to there. But also what was supposed to be different about this Conservative government. We've heard a lot about levelling up, but so far it's really been a kind of slogan in search of some substance. Michael Gove has been brought in as essentially the Secretary of State for levelling up in order to try and give it some substance. What does it actually mean? We get that it's about investing in quote unquote left behind regions of the UK, investing in infrastructure, investing in skills. But Boris Johnson has hung all kinds of different issues off of it. He talks about crime as a matter of levelling up. He talks about everything as if it's a matter of levelling up. So aside from the kind of immediate squeeze on living standards, and particularly the people who've been in receipt of that universal credit uplift, who are going to be potentially plunged into some serious hardship as a result of that ending, there's this broader thing about how do you not only just look after people in the here and now, but actually build that greater prosperity. Because if again, no substance can be given to that agenda, then it looks like the Tories will squander that opportunity they had to really carve out those working class former Labour seats as a new base for them. But they only lent the Tories their vote. So the question is, can they keep it? And I think there's a lot of disquiet amongst the Tory benches at the moment as to whether there is a clear plan for doing so.
Let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph and this article looking at the fact that travel is opening up again, quarantine abolished for almost all countries as Boris Johnson prepares for post-COVID normality. Rachel.
That's right. So the Prime Minister wants to take the remaining 54 countries currently on the red list. Most of them he plans to remove from that red list, leaving perhaps only 9 or so countries still there. So countries such as South Africa, Brazil and Mexico will come off the list. Thailand, most likely. Worth remembering that, you know, across the UK, lots of people have got family in those countries that are on the red list. And so, you know, haven't been able to see loved ones for a very, very long time. So that will be welcome news. But also worth remembering that doesn't eliminate, you know, what happens at the other end necessarily, and also all the sort of hurdles, quite costly hurdles of PCR tests, perhaps at this end, perhaps at the other end, still making travel really out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not complete opening up because travellers to countries remaining on the red list will still need to quarantine, potentially in a hotel on their return to the UK, Tom.
Yes, so if you do have the disadvantage of ending up in one of those red list countries when things shift, you're actually having to pay for that most extreme form of quarantine that we've all read about. It's important that we're making this step, I think. As Rachel was suggesting, there are still major hurdles. And I think one big thing we're going to have to get over in the sort of post-COVID era is making sure that flying and travel and international travel, not just for holidays, but to see family and all the rest of it, doesn't go back to just being the preserve of the middle class and the rich, as it was until relatively recently, really. So in terms of these kind of PCR testings, these various hurdles, you hope that they're overcome quickly because, as Rachel was saying, you know, it's like a third of kids born in England and Wales now have a foreign-born mother. This isn't just about people getting 2 weeks in the sun. It's about people seeing their families. So important that we're heading in this direction, but it's not over yet by the looks of it.
More details being released about Wayne Couzens, the murder of Sarah Everard, in the Sunday Times. And this latest detail is the fact that he worked at the House of Commons and had a pass on several occasions looking after MPs, protecting MPs, Rachel.
That's right. I mean, this story has been absolutely chilling for days. I know women across the country have just been so disturbed by this and just find it impossible to shake off because it is absolutely chilling. And now these revelations, Scotland Yard has admitted for the first time that Wayne Couzens had duties. He was a police officer who was deployed to guard MPs in Westminster and was thought to have done that at least 5 times in the last year, I believe. This is just absolutely awful. I mean, you'd think that Parliament would be one of the safest places. Obviously, MPs have that expectation, and staff, all the staff that are at Parliament as well. Absolutely awful to think that this was the case. And, you know, the newspapers, Sunday papers are full of all kinds of fresh revelations about Wayne Couzens and also some comments from police about proposals for very much needed reform and review.
Yes, and very quickly, Tom, the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, quoted as saying that he's extremely concerned by the new disclosures and would be seeking answers from Cressida Dick.
No, and rightly so. I mean, as Rachel was saying, you would expect the vetting for all kinds of different things to be much more heightened around the Houses of Commons in relation to everything from terrorism through to, obviously, questions around sexual misconduct, sexual assault, his own proclivities. So the fact that even in that environment, Couzens wasn't showing up on these vetting procedures raises some very serious questions for the Met, definitely.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, Rachel Shabi and Tom Slater. There they both are. Let's continue talking about the Met's handling of the Sarah Everard killing. We've got a piece in the Sunday Telegraph with Robert Buckland, the former Justice Secretary, saying that Met's attempt to put the onus on women to keep themselves safe is repugnant. And that does seem to be the the way many people feel about the advice that the Met has been giving women, on what to do if they feel unsafe, Rachel?
I think repugnant is a really good word for it, and it will certainly sum up the reaction of many women watching the police response, particularly the Met Police response to this, and again, putting the onus on women, telling women to, wave down a bus, for instance, if they're worried about a police officer who has apprehended them, all kinds of measures. And you just think, this is absolutely appalling. This is like gaslighting women across the country. The onus is not on women here. It's on the police. And I feel really annoyed and angry that the whole week the response has been just to minimize and dismiss. And it actually shows you the scale of the problem with this culture of misogyny and of just not taking these issues seriously enough. So we've had a week of the Met Police trying to minimize this as well by saying that Wayne Couzens was, some kind of bad apple, whereas the reality is that, this is something that is endemic, it's institutional, it's a cultural issue. And the fact that the police forces are trying to minimise and dismiss in this way...
Just wanted to bring Tom in on that point of it being endemic, because the Mirror tells us that 26 colleagues of Wayne Couzens have committed sex crimes since 2016. This is the probe into the Met Police. So, as Rachel was saying, Tom, it does seem as if this is endemic in the police force.
Well, I think we have to hold the police to a higher standard than pretty much anyone who works in public life, because of the powers that they are lent, because of the amount of trust that rests on, and because of the high cost when that is betrayed, both for individuals and for society more broadly. I think the response from the Met has been tin-eared, but I think it's also the reason that this particular crime strikes so much at everyone's humanity, really. It feels so depraved, it feels so horrendous. It's because crimes of this nature, of this scale, and involving serving police officers are so rare. That's why they shock us so much. You can understand, and whilst I'll never hold back from criticising the police, you can understand why there's this desperate desire to say, we are not like this. And even in his sentencing remarks, the justice who handed down that whole life order made a point of the investigation, of there was no attempt to close ranks around this to minimise any embarrassment. So yes, the response from the Met has been tin-eared, has been ridiculous. It's basically sending the signal, if nothing else, that women should be afraid of them, which is a ridiculous and horrendous state of affairs. But we do need to remember that this is a very singular crime. That's why it's so incredibly shocking. And whilst there are practical lessons that should be made from it, I think an attempt to kind of over-politicise it in this way could end up doing more harm than good.
Rachel, very quickly, just I've got time for a very short section on the Sunday Times, and this is a new law to make HRT free on prescription for women. Just your thoughts very quickly on that.
Yes, Labour MP Caroline Harris, I think she has enough support for a private member's bill on this. I think it's a great move. HRT prescriptions are £10, but HRT, and I know because I'm taking it, it's actually 2 sets of prescriptions, so that's £20. And it is a lot, and it's already a lot to be dealing with. Caroline Harris is saying that when she thought she was having a nervous breakdown when she was menopausal, because she just didn't know how to recognise the symptoms. So I think there's still a lot of work to do on this to help women when it comes to dealing with this.
Rachel, Tom, thank you both for the moment. See you a little later on. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.